Sam, you've covered the former president. You've written about the former president. We see the former president every day on TV. One part of us, I don't know about you, but part of me is not surprised by these comments because Donald Trump is a singular act. He does not understand, he cannot comprehend what it's like to be part of a unit, whether it's a company of soldiers, a platoon, or a group of people in an office. He does not understand the idea of group effort. What was your view when you heard that tape we played earlier this morning, that you played on earlier, way too early, when he's talking about the dangers to Jewish people? Okay, yeah. Alex is going to play it. Rack it up, Alex. Hold on.
Toxic poison of anti-Semitism now courses through the veins of radical Democrat Party. I mean, this is a radical group of people. I never thought I'd see that either. They have gone crazy. And instead of expunging this hatred, Kamala Harris is pandering to it. You'll be okay if you have the right president. You have the wrong president, like her, honestly, you don't have a chance.
Sam?
Yeah. So I had not seen both that and the comments about the Congressional Medal recipients until this morning. I had seen the hour-and-a-half long news conference, if you want to talk about it. And, you know, look, I like you, Mike, I watched the whole thing. At times it's painful. But it also gets at this weird dichotomy around Trump, which is, on the one hand, we all sort of gawk at it, right? He's a carnival barker. He's talking about Cheerios. He's making comments about the price of goods from in front of his country club. I mean, the discord there, the disconnect there is profound, right? Like, he's at his country club. And then, just minutes later, he's talking and denigrating people who were injured in the line of service. And that, to me, really just sort of symbolizes him, right? On the one hand, we've kind of grown numb to it a little bit, and on the other hand, you still get shocked, and you still can get shocked by what he says. And I'll just say, you know, as a matter of politics, and I know this is not about politics because that's secondary here, but as a matter of politics, let's talk about this. 2 points. One is he started the press conference. Literally, the first word out of his mouth was, Kamala Harris has destroyed the world. Destroyed the world, okay? Once you start there, at that level, it's tough to really up the ante. If you've destroyed the world, you know, you can't really go much further than that, okay? So I'm not really sure that serves him well to start at that level. And two is, look, I mean, the Republican campaign right now, the Trump campaign, is going really aggressively at Tim Walz on grounds that he exaggerated his service, but more importantly, on grounds that he ducked out of serving in Iraq right before his unit was deployed because he wanted to pursue a political career. As I read Trump's remarks yesterday, Tim Walz should be celebrated, right? Because who would want to do that? Who would want to risk service? So I don't really see how they can, on the one hand, accuse Tim Walz of doing what he did, and on the other hand, Trump get up there and say, only suckers really go and serve. You know, the real medal recipients are those who get the Presidential Medal of Freedom, not the congressional one.
Yeah, and you know, Sam, he's also, in his time, he's called groups in Charlottesville that chanted, Jews will not replace us, holding torches, called them good people. So there were good people on both sides. He had said that any Jew that doesn't vote for him is not a good Jew. And when he talks to Americans who happen to be Jewish, he calls Benjamin Netanyahu your prime minister. He calls the Israeli ambassador to America your ambassador. Calls the country your country, suggesting that if you are a Jew, you are not fully American.
Yeah, he's talked about, I mean, the dual loyalty trope. I think people need to understand this. The dual loyalty trope is inherently anti-Semitic. And the reason it is because it suggests that people like me, Jews who were born in America, actually aren't loyal to America. We're loyal to Jews, and only Jews in a Jewish state. And he's pushed this stuff since he started running for president. And then he gets up there and he says, well, you know, the real threats to anti-Semitism are on the other side. And Doug Emhoff, the first Jewish spouse to serve in the Big Four, that being the president, vice president, is not really, sufficiently Jewish. And I don't think people quite appreciate just how insulting that can be, but also how deflating it can be, because Jewish Americans are Americans. We don't identify with Israel because it's our faith. In fact, a lot of Jewish Americans find the Israeli government in its current incarnation abhorrent. We have the capacity for independent thought. We have the capacity for loyalty to America. And he removes that from us when he says things like the things that you just read.